Hello in my engineering channel, again politics, sorry. Here we see Mr. Paul Warburg. Warburg, it's Krieg and Castle. And he's having a channel, 160,000 followers, pretty more than me. And he is always telling the right story. And let's check out what he is telling us. And here's his newest video. He has similar videos before. The EU finally called Putin's bluff. Putin's bluffs always, clearly. And we will check this video out about 3 or 4 minutes. My psychology doesn't last longer for this stuff. And I will comment what he is doing and which arguments and which strawman arguments, I hope it's the correct word, he has to send millions of peoples to cause millions of death. That's the point. And let's go ahead. This is Paul Warburg. As a German, I would say, Name ist Legion. War is Krieg. That's very simple. And he seems to be an expert. Let's go.
You know, I've said for a long time that there are 2 simple pillars that, if pursued consistently enough, and if they are pursued for a long enough period of time, will guarantee a Ukrainian victory over Russia. And I do specifically use that word guarantee, and I don't use it lightly, because I really believe that if these pillars are pursued consistently and thoroughly and for the long term, that a Ukrainian victory over Russia is already assured.
Okay.
Those 2 pillars are actually very simple.
Oh. This pillar, this Säule is assured. The Russians will lose. Okay. He is an expert, and we have all the experts in Germany. We have extreme experts in Germany. For example, the professor of the German Army High School in Munich, Carlo Massala. He told in end of 22, the Russians can't win. That was a side. Okay. And remember these times we discussed about helmets. Do we deliver helmets to the Ukrainians or not? That was a discussion. Okay, now what do we deliver? Tanks, airplanes, howitzers, rockets, drones, and in the future time, and cruise missiles, and so on and so forth. And so there is a continuous Russian progress. But there was a guarantee, and now he guarantees that millions of people will die. That's the point. But why does he do this guarantee? I think he's paid because war is money. And yeah, that's the point. And to continue to keep people in this war, and the official, this means money. That's a simple point. And he guarantees, and he doesn't say this right. Okay. Oh, I'm sure that your brain is not working very well, and I'm sure that is my personal opinion. And why it is, I will tell. And this reasons of this war are simple. Let's check out his strawman arguments. What's a strawman argument? I don't know if it's a correct expression. I'm not a native speaker. A strawman, you place some argument which which can be contradicted, but it's a wrong argument. That's a strawman. You put some argument which is not, and he says he knows the basic reason of this war. He tells, and let's check out what he is contradicting this basic argument, and that's the point. And then you see how much what will happen if his guarantee won't work. He will not kill himself. He's viel zu feige für sowas. But let's check it out. Okay.
The first is defensive warfare, and the second is economic warfare. But
okay, 2 things: defensive, economic warfare. Let's making first of all economic. This is really funny. That is another, or there are many publications because Russian ruble, so currency, drops. And it is very bad for the Russians that the ruble drops, and they will not survive this. That is for the last 4 or 5 years. You can also check out. It's correct. The ruble dropped. Since 1 or 2 months, the ruble increases its value. Then there comes some from such a similar channel to him. The ruble is increasing. That is bad for the Russians. Economics. That's funny, because everything has positives and negatives. That should be clear for everybody. But this is all those and the economics. Well, okay, okay, and we had 20. Okay. And then the second thing, you know, that is sort of defensive. Yeah, okay. Dr. Ursula von der Leyen put in 2014 put 1,000 tanks to the Russian border. 1,000. And a tank is an aggression, is for aggression, and not for defense. Think about that. The point of the German tanks well, we are here in engineering channel. Maybe some people have it. The soil in Ukraine is very wet, and German tanks, the Leo, has 70 tons. It sinks down. That's the point. Say that's not useful for this region. And if you put these tanks there, that is, you can pull them out with 2 Bergepanzer because it stacks, although it's a tank. And that's the point. What many people do not understand. It's tactics. You have to adapt it. And the lighter Russian tanks are much more flexible, and they don't sink in this soil. Hitler already had to accept it, let's say. That was the point. He saw that his heavy tanks did not work when he went this direction. Okay.
While they are simple, sometimes it helps to go back to the basics and be reminded of the fundamentals. Yes. Part of the reason that Ukraine has struggled in their war effort, at least according to the eyes of the media, is that the media has very consistently forgotten what kind of war Ukraine is actually fighting. And because they have forgotten the fundamentals of this actual war, they have often treated the war in Ukraine as if it were a different kind of war that somehow Ukraine is losing if they lose small amounts of territory over long periods of time. This is a narrative that sees any small Russian push forward as a massive Ukrainian loss, but it's a narrative that pretty much every analyst of the war in Ukraine will tell you is not aligned to reality.
Oh, what he's telling is not aligned with reality. This is, again, a straw man argument. Not again, this is a straw man. What's going on there? The point is not the 10% of the area is lost. The point is, he tells that everybody's telling that the press and the media tells, oh, they are going back, and this doesn't, you must not care. That's his, as I see it, and this is complete bullshit, and this is a strawman argument, because first of all, it's not the area they lost, it's the people they lose, they've lost. That's a key point. And when we remember Dr. Ursula von der Leyen, it was about mid of 23, she told, please don't fix it on the last digit, that Ukrainians have lost 450,000 soldiers. 500,000 or such a thing. Half an hour later, it was cut out of her speech. Oh, the Russians never tell how many people they lost. That's the other side, the other hand. But he tells that the media is telling although that, okay, but this is clearly that the media is supporting Ukraine. Why they do it, everybody can think about it. And the media permanently supports Ukraine by false flag actions. And this is, he lies here. In my opinion, you have to decide who takes. Okay, I'm not very fast speaker, sorry. I have to concentrate and also to speak, not to thrown out here, because it's very critical. But what we have, he says, oh, so the press and the media is always supporting Russia and this. Okay, so let's go several times to several facts. And if you go and check it out, then you will detect that always before delivery weapons to Ukraine, there are actions of Russians in the middle of the day which killed children. let's go to 6th of September, 6th of September 23. There was in the mid of the day at the marketplace, there was a bomb. Usually Russians bomb in the night. You see it with Oreshnik aggression. It was also in the night because these Oreshniks, these hazelnuts, light up, and this is the air which is okay. There's another German video about hypersonic flow, and this is what. And one day later, so the Tagesschau, so the news magazine, which is viewed by 1 million people or such a thing, by Susanne Daubner. She told that they killed and one children. For me, it was clear because always when I see 1982, the lie of then they pulled them out, the little children out of their breeding boxes and slammed them on the bus. Children are always good for making what he does. And okay, and Baerbock, this is the German, okay, you know, our minister with a brown grandpa, which becomes now the head of the United Nations. That is a provocation of the because Germans killed in minimum 25 million Russians. What she is then on the head, and the Germans, okay, she promised to deliver weapons. And 14 days later, the Tagesschau, the news magazine in German TV, is cut by 1 minute 50 because they detected, and the New York Times detected that the Ukrainians bombed their own people. The next bombing was 2 days of the Russians, clearly. The next bombing of the Russians was 2 days before a big NATO meeting. Very clear. So Russians always bomb 1 or 2 days before any NATO and that is clear. This is here. So the war, he's a warmonger. He's nothing else. He needs war because I'm pretty sure he's really paid for to tell the right truth. That's the point. And this is always the same thing. And he tells this. Okay, let's go. And this is, yeah, good.
And now it seems that the European Union is finally at a political level understanding the actual reality of this war.
Okay. And the Germans and the EU is understanding the reality of this war. He's telling. And this is complete bullshit. What's going on? The EU politicians don't understand anything. Most important for Dr. Ursula von der Leyen is to get her money. She ordered per SMS 2 billion vaccination doses and nothing happened and so on and so forth. It's her money. And although the other German politicians wanted to be in Bundestag, and when there is war, then they can stay as long as the war is going on. That's the point. So that's point on. Next point, if you have, for example, our Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmermann. It's okay. She is also a warmonger, and okay, let's go to the end of 22 again. And there had been 2 dead Polish farmers. Two dead Polish. And for sure they were shot by Russians, and they wanted to paragraph 5 of to make a war against Russia. It was the intelligence of this female politician. Okay, and that was the intention. The Russians killed 2 Polish people, and now we need a war against Russia. That is his brain of Paul Warburg. And what happened? Oh, that was bad. Okay, so by chance the Ukrainians had the wrong direction, and it was detected again, like in Konstantinovka. Everybody can check it out. That the Ukrainians bombed and killed the 2 Polish people. But then, there was nothing. There was no continuation after detection of that. Say that they are like the 3 apes. They didn't want. But to make a war because 2 Polish people are bombed against 1 nation, and she wanted it, is interesting because on the other way around, Ukrainians killed them, and then they had no intention to bomb from Germany, Ukraine. And this is a fun fact. There are so many fun facts in this war. I can tell that, okay, fun fact, Zelensky's presidency, I don't know the correct word, ended up in May 2024. I checked out Ukrainian Verfassung. There is, its length is 5 years. There is no option to lengthen it because of war or something else. In Germany, it's different. If we are aggressed, which is always possible to be aggressed, that is by a false flag action, you can tell you, then it's a very simple thing. Then there is no more election of Bundestag, and who's going into charge? Mr. Merz, he was in the Aufsichtsrat, not CE, I don't know, any officer of the largest thing I have to switch in my brain. English also, okay, action tax, which is worth 15,000 billion euro, correct? Yes. Okay, because he said in the Aufsichtsrat, he was in the not CEO, he was in the chief, anything else, and I think he invested in Eastern Ukraine money. And now it's away, and then now he's a problem, and now he becomes chief, who can send Germans against Russians. That's also a fun fact. Not a fun fact. And there are so many fun facts, and the real reason of this, I will bring a next fun fact. Because, okay, next fun fact is Zelensky, who is not longer president, but President Zelensky is going to, that's a bullshit. President Zelensky was end of 22 in Canada, and there was a brown 98-year-old killer, and he made a speech, and there was the whole Canadian parliament, and also Zelensky applauded him with standing ovations. No, there are no Nazis. No, for sure, this cannot be a Nazi, although when there is speaking any of this brown dirt. No Nazis. Okay, that's the next point. And how can we continue? And there is another thing. We have here the real reason. Melnik, the external minister of Ukraine, was in 2021, exactly 1 year before the beginning of the war, in Germany, in the German Bundestag. And he said to the Bundestag, it's also in the left-winged Spiegel, written down, oh baby, okay, and he said, either you let us into NATO, or we get from another source atomic bombs. And that is the reason of this war. The Nazis have lost the war. They killed in minimum 25 million Russians, and they are beleidigt. Okay, and they want to. And if Ukrainians get atomic bombs, they will throw it to Moscow, and Moscow will avoid it in each case. In every case, they will avoid it. And if it is not avoidable, they will throw nuclear bombs, because before we are bombed, because for Russians it's not so complicated, because you have to know that Russia is the largest country in the world, huge, and there are nearly no people in it. That's the point, and therefore all other countries don't want to grab Russia to get the oil and the gas and the other stuff. That's the point, and therefore they have militarized very much. And many people say, oh, they are 10 or to 15 years in front of other countries, 10 to 15 years. And they have hypersonic weapons. I can tell you, I'm a specialist. And the DARPA, that's the American specialists for development of weapons, did not get to, they are in the beginning, or they are the first steps, they got to have a hypersonic bomb. But the Russians have it since 10 years, or such a thing. And this is the point. And they don't need any nuclear weapons, because there is, in fact, no way to fight, because they are simply too fast. That there is no way to react for anybody else. So, and he tells, he will guarantee that the Russians will lose. that is, I think this is, and this means go into the war, you have no risk. And this is, what shall I say? It is incredible when I told you these fun facts. And these fun facts are additional. Let's say, for example, the Germans and the French educated Ukrainian soldiers. And what happened? And there's another fact, that we have the AfD. That's a right-winged. And interestingly, the right-winged people, they say we have to stop war now. And they are right-winged. Maybe everybody sees that is a little bit twisted in the brain who says this. But the point is, they asked the Bundestag what happened with these soldiers and how many Nazis have been there. And they had to answer that the French people pulled 7 and the Germans had to send 5 people, in general 12 people, back to Ukraine because they wore on the jackets and so on Nazi symbols. So, but the EU is telling there are no Nazis in Ukraine. But they sent the French and the Germans sent 12 Nazis which wore visible Nazi symbols on their costume, let's say. They sent them back. Therefore, there is a slight contradiction. Are they Nazis or are they not? And I told already, Melnik was and said, and Melnik, there is a photo in front of Stepan Bandera. This is about 2 years ago, and Melnik is a fan of Stepan Bandera in front of the hero of Ukraine. But Stepan Bandera was a nationalist and, as I know, a killer of Jewish people. And the largest, the most dense Jewish killing was not in Germany. You can back. Where was it? It was a massacre of Babin Yar. It was a massacre, and it was in 41, close before the Germans came, and this was in 2 days. They killed 35,000 Jewish people, and it's Babin Yar, and Babin Yar is nowadays in the area of Kiev. That's fun. Sorry, funny. And not very funny, I can tell, because it's cruel, but there are no Nazis. No. And that's the point, and here you see the reason, and what he tells what the reason of this war is complete nonsense. The point is that the Russians don't want to have Nazis close to them, and that's the key point. And this is what he does not tell, and this is okay. And so this is a bluff. Yeah, we go. It's a title. He has several videos on the net, and he's always putting the same stuff. But here he's a bluff. Okay, let's go.
Understanding what actually needs to be done to guarantee a Ukrainian victory, and finally seems to actually be taking those steps.
That's to guarantee. Okay, that means who wants to guarantee? Okay, the CDU, the Christian Democratic Union, tells before the elections in Germany, which were held up in February or such a thing this year, they tell the Russians must not win. It's the same manner like him. And the Russians, there's a progress, a continuous and slow progress of the Russians into Ukraine, exactly because of the reason not to have long-range, especially atomic bombs, and therefore there's a progress. And for sure, the war will not end, because the Russians say we want to have this area which we kept, and the EU says no way, you have to retreat, and then they go back. And here we have the next patient, it's also a patient, a European patient. Here always the Europeans violate contracts, that is especially Germany. For example, Germany must not have nuclear weapons. Now they buy F-35, it's a catastrophic airplane in my opinion, because of one single engine. Okay, that's too far to carry nuclear weapons, but it's forbidden after Second World War in the contract. That is a contract violation, first of all. They must not place NATO bases in the eastern of Germany. What did they do? They put one into Russia. That's the next provocation. Next provocation, putting this Baerbock to the head of United Nations with her brown grandpa. That is the next provocation. And she told, we are fighting a war against Russia. Russia did not aggress NATO nor Germany. That's the point. And when she is in the war against Russia, this means that Germany has already aggressed the Russians. That is clear. That is a logic that is for everybody clear. The last person who did it was Hitler, who said, we are fighting a war against you. That was okay. And Hitler, there was a Stalin, I think Hitler made a non-aggression contract, and then Hitler ignored it again. It's the same thing. And then we have the next ignorance of this NATO. NATO must not exceed to the east. It was broken 3 or 4 times. You can check it out in nsarchive.org. You can read what Gorbachev heard, and there is a documentation of Gorbachev, Baker, and Shevardnadze. It's written down in some speech protocols. It also violated, not what Inchi said, it's again violated. Next point. And so on and so forth. And Merkel, finally, this is a Christian Democratic, the party is CDU, the same as Merz is here. And Merkel said, we never intended to keep Minsk contracts. That's CDU, that's the Christians, the good people, the blonde and blue-eyed, and the Christians, as I know, I'm sure, that the German Christians were close connected to Hitler, and they also killed the Jewish people and so on. This is a Christian belief, because we are the good ones. Because it's exactly the same point. There was the German Christians and the began the church, and they fought internal fights. Some were against Hitler, and the most people were of the church was with Hitler. That is the next point. And Merkel said, we never intended, and this Minsk contract was to demilitarize Ukraine, and between 28 and 22, there was extreme militarization by CIA. They put their 10 stations, and they made 3 lines that the Russians cannot penetrate. Therefore, they have such a slow proceeding. And the next point is that what I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, that the Russians don't want to lose many people, and therefore they make a carpet bombing of the area, and then they proceed. And this is because if you proceed and want to proceed fast, then you lose then your own death are up to 70% killed by your own people, victim of the friendly fire, it's called. And therefore, therefore the Russians proceed so slow that they don't lose many people. And therefore, if you guarantee such a thing, that is really not very nice. And I can guarantee that your brain is a little bit not adult, I would say. I think that there seems to be some pampers. Your brain seems to be a little bit pampered and not adult. That's my personal opinion, because nobody can guarantee. And the German NH-90, the fuel tanks are in the floor. Okay, they are by 50 munition. They are theoretically safe, but in the complete floor there's fuel. That's very funny, and the Russians know that, because everything the Germans and the NATO is talked about, everything is discussed 10 times in Russia. And for example, the Kerch Bridge. The intelligence of these people is here that these German people, there were 4 people who talked over, and 2 of them were in an open line, and the Russians heard it. And the Kerch Bridge is mostly frequented by civilians, not by military. It's a military bridge, but and if you destroy Kerch Bridge, you kill hundreds of civilians. Similar to Crocus Hall, because the IS is fighting together with Ukrainians. One should know. And the IS killed 135 civilians in Crocus Hall. They want to kill the singer, how it's called, the Putin's lover. Okay, and this is the point. And here, that he has the knowledge, I'm pretty sure he knows nothing. And the root cause of this war is that the Russians don't want to have Nazis close to the border with nuclear bombs. That is a very simple stuff. Sorry, my windows is closing. Yeah.
which is very encouraging and very positive on one hand. On the other hand, it does tell us that the war in Ukraine will probably continue for some time. Now,
okay, he tells us that the war will continue for some time. And that's the point, because the Russians say this conflict will take a very long time in future. That's the point. For some time. It's positively expressed, it's framing. What's a some time? That is nonsense, is this. For some time. What is some time? If you guarantee, that's his own contradiction, if he can guarantee that the Russians can't win, therefore, what can? Then he also has to guarantee when the war is ending. And this is complete nonsense what he's telling here, because either or. And if, what will happen? That is, okay, that's in his own brain, his contradiction he does not detect. Let's continue. Okay.
In order to explain all of that, let me first break down those two pillars of a Ukrainian victory that I already mentioned earlier.
Okay.
And then I will explain how the European Union, just in the past week, has finally been taking action to shore up both of those pillars in a way that is tending towards a guaranteed Ukrainian victory.
Yes.
So first, the two pillars. I mentioned the two pillars are defensive warfare and economic warfare. So,
okay. A tank is an aggression weapon, not a defensive weapon. Or only for the understanding of the people here, he will never... okay, it is a anti-tank weapon. That would be defensive. Okay, and drones can be either or. And the other thing I told you already, that's also some contradiction in their own argumentation. Yeah, okay.
Let's look at defensive warfare first. The war in Ukraine is a very particular type of war, most similar historically probably to World War I. It is a war of attrition. And that means that the war in Ukraine will ultimately be won by the side that can outlast the other. Rather simple, but what it means is that in the short term, currently right now, and probably for the foreseeable future until something significant changes, the war in Ukraine will not be decided by who takes what position today, but rather by the cost exerted in defending or assaulting a particular position.
That is correct. That's called, I don't know what's called, Abnutzungskrieg, like there are two fronts close together and nobody is, but we have the point in Germany, for example, in 2017 there was a, they said we have to defend ourselves, we have munition for 14 days. 14 days. Okay? And now we have delivered for 10 days. Therefore, we cannot defend ourselves. That's the next point. And now they are extending the military. But the point is that what they did in the last days, they went very close to world war on soil of Europe. And what is they detected? The point is, Russia has their hypersonic weapons, and yeah, so we don't have anything against it, nothing. And the Taurus is to break a bunker. It's not to explode. It's a specific, because it's not valid. It's not to destroy the church, but it is not. It is for a bunker. It's below earth with 1 meter of concrete. That is not against the bridge. And they had the problem. These four people which were completely brain dead, which with 2 open lines, who wanted to kill hundreds of Russian people, civilists. They knew it, because this goes through the hollow bridge and there is nearly no damage. That is the wrong weapon. That's the point. And but Oreshnik, you can put it, or the other hypersonic bombs that can destroy. And if there is Taurus is sent to, and only German it's built in Schrobenhausen in Germany, in Bavaria, and if there is one, and they detect it, there's one Taurus sent to Russia, and they detect it, and then I'm pretty sure I can guarantee that there will be a call of Medved, or the outer minister who is married with the ice dancer queen, or anybody else, and tell Mr. Merz, please think please take care this night not to have people in Schrobenhausen, in Deal Defense, in Heckler & Koch, and Airbus Defense and Airbus Helicopter Defense, because we will send you some rockets, and then everything will be dead. And there is no way to stop them. There is no way. And maybe they send also some bombs onto our gas stations. Real gas, not petrol gas, our gas storages, and maybe some bridges, maybe it will be, and because they are anyway, they break down by themselves, the Russians can help us to make newer reconstruction, and then everything will be dead. They can, with one aggression, the Russians can finish the whole stuff here in Germany, but nobody cares. But they won't tell. And here standing, they finally called Putin's bluff. It's not Putin. It's not Putin. It's the Duma. The Duma, as I told, okay, in Ukraine, you know, the Duma should have been overtaken because Zelensky is no longer president. You know, it's 103 in the Ukrainian Verfassung, but it's written, it's for 5 years, and then it's all, there is nothing. But in Germany, if there is war, then Merz overtakes it. That is a fact. And what shall we? Okay, I've lost a little bit the line. And therefore, they don't know nothing. And the brain law, what they have, for example, let's say, this little girl who wanted to have war against Russia because Ukrainians bombed the Polish people. She said that the Ukrainians have their grain is for 70 billion people, which feeds them, 70 billion. Okay, that's the brain of these politicians. 70 billion is really, it's no joke. It's the same to Warburg, 100,000 of kilometers away, or we make a 360-degree turn to go in the other direction. That are our politicians. Or the other, the green one, fuck the police bastards, or such a thing. And say, oh, the bastard is not a bad word, otherwise, okay, and so on. These are our politicians which do not have any brain, and they have to decide about things. They cannot imagine what's going on. And to tell that they have detected something, okay, anybody who is not thinking in numbers and not knowing anything, and I'm sure they don't, let's say 85% of them do not know how many zeros a billion has. That I'm absolutely sure. And this is not, they are in their bubble and decide out of their bubble and send millions of people into death. That's what they can, not more, not less, and not more. And let's finally do a fun fact. We had a weapon. It's called Heckler Koch G36, and it was intended for the use of 20 years, and at the 19th year it was a catastrophe and it was defect and didn't work correct. That was interesting. 19 years it worked perfect, and one CEO or what was what told this weapon is excellent. Only apes and journalists shoot with them in continuous fire, because the point was that this weapon was designed to defend Germany. That was about 1990. So, and then there came this Dr. Ursula von der Leyen, the similar brain with his 2 billion vaccinations, with their SMS, with Pfizer, and this was a defect, because what did they do? It was a light weapon, and they put in one piece 500 rounds through it, and therefore they detected with this light weapon. Oh, it's 20. I think it's 25. That's 20 magazines, 20 times, and then they detect. Oh, it bends because it's become warm, and then the accuracy is not allowed. And the fun fact is that there was a doctor, PhD Suda from McKinsey, and there was also from ThyssenKrupp, and Dr. Feldhaus also came from, and most probably they wanted to drop the value of Heckler & Koch, that ThyssenKrupp can overtake it. That was the intention. That has nothing to do, this is only money. And therefore we are Germans, and we are, as Germans, we are sitting in the middle. And the most crucial point is the people who say we do not need any more war. They are the Nazis here in Germany, and this is a crucial point. And this is the people here we know who in reality the Nazi is. And as we all know, the EU says there are no Nazis in Ukraine. Everybody shall think about it. I'm finished here, and I get.
And because
crazy.
This is the case, it is relatively simple to exploit the psychology of Russia's leaders to force a Ukrainian victory.
Okay, let's finalize this. We have the Medved, who is very impulsive. You see it when he makes his X posts with, I think he was it, think twice Nazi, he said to anybody else. Here you see it. And I'm sure that when Medved, the bear, would have been president, then I'm sure that Ukraine had several little nukes on their soil already. And finally, yeah, the EU finally called Putin's bluff. Why is this? Okay, let's say if a farmer goes 100 days and feeds his chicks, and at the 101st day, he takes a knife and slaughters them. That's the point. That is complete nonsense to an argument that when it runs 100 times the same in the same manner, that's the 101st time, it's also the same. And as I told you, they had so many contract violations of the West, and sometimes the water runs over the border, and then they will have a long nose or a red-faced, and then they have to think if they want a world war or not, and then the Germans and you will go into the war. But I'm sure you don't want to go, but you guarantee what's your guarantee worth if you don't want to go yourself into the war? That is not a guarantee. It's some nonsense you talk. In this manner, thank you for my first English video. I'm not a native speaker, but it's these people who always talk and will pull us into a war with millions of deaths. The Nazis made their own hands dirty. Other people nowadays send other. That's the difference between Nazis and other people we see today. That's it. Thank you for your attention.